It was a quiet night on Wednesday, September 15th, 2010, when a chilling event unfolded on the third floor of the MCM Elegant Hotel in Beaumont, Texas. This is the story of Greg Flanagan, a 55-year-old oil and gas businessman whose life ended abruptly in room 348 under circumstances that baffled the police, private investigators, and the entire community for years. No broken windows, no signs of forced entry, no blood, yet a lifeless body lay on the floor, leaving behind a mountain of questions. This is not just a tale of a mysterious death, but also of Ken Brennan, a relentless private investigator whose obsession with the truth unraveled a case that seemed impossible to solve. This story will take you from the streets of Beaumont to a small town in Wisconsin, where a seemingly ordinary death sparked an extraordinary investigation. Was it murder, an accident, or something else entirely? Let's dive into this enigmatic tale, peeling back the layers of mystery step by step. Greg Flanagan was an unassuming yet hardworking man. At 55, he lived a comfortable life in Lafayette, Louisiana, with his wife Susie Flanagan. Together with his brother Michael Flanagan, Greg ran OGM Land Company, a business dealing in mineral rights for oil and gas properties. His work required frequent travel between Lafayette, Houston, and Beaumont, a routine that had become second nature. Every Monday he'd leave home, spend the week working, and return to his family on weekends. Greg was a likable man, known for his friendly demeanor, honesty, and dedication. He wasn't one for drinking or socializing at hotel bars. His life revolved around work, family, and simple pleasures like smoking cigarettes, watching TV, and munching on his favorite Reese's Crispy Crunchy bar. His wife, Susie, was the cornerstone of his world. Their marriage was built on deep love and mutual respect, and Susie often described Greg as her rock, the man who made her world complete. The MCM Elegant Hotel in Beaumont was a familiar stop for Greg, a popular spot for business travelers. The hotel was like a second home to him. He always stayed on the third floor, in room 348, where he followed a meticulous routine. His suitcase was neatly unpacked, dirty clothes tucked into the closet, clean ones hung on hangers. His toiletry bag hung on the towel rack, and everything was in its place. This predictability made what happened on that fateful night all the more shocking. On Wednesday, September 15th, 2010, the warm Texas evening carried on as usual at the MCM Elegant Hotel. Greg returned to his room after a day of work, settling into his familiar routine. According to his colleague Miles Martin, Greg's evening was uneventful. He entered room 348, turned on the air conditioner — he liked his room cold — and propped himself up on the bed with two pillows. On the bedspread, he laid out a clean towel, placing his cigarettes, lighter, BlackBerry, TV remote, and a Reese's Crispy Crunchy bar. The TV was tuned to Iron Man 2, and Greg sipped on a root beer while lighting a cigarette, ready to unwind. But that night, Greg never saw the end of the movie. Around 10 p.m., a hotel employee entered room 348 and found Greg lifeless on the floor. The TV was still on, but the air conditioner had stopped. His wallet, containing nearly $1,000 in cash, remained untouched in his pocket. There were no signs of a struggle, no broken furniture, no blood, just a small abrasion on his left cheek, possibly from hitting the floor. The Beaumont Police Department was called to the scene, and Detective Scott Apple took charge. At first glance, it seemed like a natural death. Greg's age, his smoking habit, and the absence of visible injuries led police to assume he'd suffered a heart attack or stroke. Miles Martin, who saw the body, thought, those cigarettes finally caught up with him. But the case wasn't that simple. When Greg's body was sent to the Jefferson County Medical Examiner for an autopsy on September 16th, 2010, the findings turned the case upside down. The autopsy revealed severe internal injuries, crushed ribs and damaged lungs, consistent with a massive impact. Yet there were no external wounds, no stab marks, no bullet holes. How could such injuries occur without any visible trauma? Was it murder? An accident? The police were stumped, and the case of room 348 became a haunting mystery. On September 16, 2010, the Beaumont Police Department began treating the case with more seriousness. Detective Scott Apple interviewed hotel staff, guests, and Greg's colleagues. Everyone described Greg as a quiet, conflict-free man with no known enemies. The cash in his wallet ruled out robbery as a motive. Surveillance footage showed Greg entering his room that evening and a few electricians moving equipment in and out of their vans. But nothing appeared suspicious. Apple described it as watching people come and go. No clear leads emerged. Meanwhile, Susie Flanagan refused to accept that her husband's death was natural. She was convinced there was more to the story. Desperate for answers, she hired Ken Brennan, a seasoned private investigator with a reputation for cracking tough cases, as noted in a previous Vanity Fair article. Brennan took on the case in May 2011, diving into Greg's life and the events of that night with meticulous attention. Brennan started by reconstructing Greg's routine and examining hotel maintenance records. He discovered that on the night of September 15, 2010, a power circuit had tripped in room 348, likely due to someone heating popcorn in a microwave. This outage affected room 349 next door and several rooms below. It was a small clue, but for Brennan, it was a starting point. He and Apple began focusing on the electricians who had been staying at the hotel, members of a union who had since returned to Wisconsin. In June 2011, Brennan and Apple traveled to Wisconsin to interview two electricians, Tim Steinmetz and Lance Muller, at the Chippewa County Sheriff's Department. Steinmetz repeated his story, but Brennan sensed inconsistencies. Under pressure and the threat of charges for false statements, Steinmetz finally broke and revealed a shocking truth. The interrogation in June 2011 was a turning point. Steinmetz confessed that on the night of September 15, 2010, something catastrophic happened in room 349. He and Lance Muller were in their room when Muller, who owned a handgun, was cleaning it. In a moment of carelessness, the gun discharged. The bullet tore through the wall separating room 349 from room 348, striking Greg Flanagan in the chest as he sat on his bed. The impact was so precise that it caused massive internal damage without leaving an exit wound or visible blood. Brennan realized that a small dent in the wall of room 348, previously dismissed as routine wear and tear, was actually the bullet's entry point. He and Apple re-examined the room and confirmed that the dent aligned with the door frame of room 349, where it had been patched up by hotel staff as part of regular maintenance. This revelation transformed the case from a possible murder to a tragic accident. But why had Muller and Steinmetz kept silent? And where was the gun now? Brennan learned that Muller's gun was locked in a safe with his attorney, creating another hurdle. In July 2011, Brennan brought Susie Flanagan to Beaumont for a meeting with Paul Noyola, an assistant district attorney. Brennan argued passionately that the case deserved further action. He urged Noyola to issue a search warrant for Muller's gun, determined to uncover the full truth, whether it was murder or an accident. His persistence paid off. In August 2011, the gun was seized and tested. Ballistic analysis confirmed that the bullet that killed Greg came from Muller's firearm. However, Texas law was ambiguous about accidental shootings. Noyola explained that juries and judges often lean toward leniency in such cases. For Susie, this was a bitter pill to swallow, but at least she had closure. In September 2011, Lance Muller was charged with negligent discharge of a firearm. He accepted a plea deal, receiving a reduced sentence. While it wasn't the full justice Susie had hoped for, she finally knew what happened to her husband. This is the story of an ordinary man's extraordinary death, a tenacious investigator who pieced together the truth from fleeting clues, and a wife who fought for answers until the end. Greg Flanagan's death turned a quiet hotel room in Beaumont into the centerpiece of a haunting mystery that will linger in the town's memory forever.